Alright, new video. It's been a while. This is going to be part one of the 2023 end of year catch up. This will likely be 2 to 3 parts. I haven't decided. There's two shows in particular that I really want to talk about a lot, to the point where I think that they deserve their own video. So it was going to be two. It might be more than that. We'll see. But this is sort of going to be stream of consciousness, just going to rapid fire through some of these. I saw the movie No One Will Save You. It was a Hulu original film, I believe. It was a Hulu film. It was released on Hulu. I don't know if it was released widely in theaters, but it was advertised mainly as a Hulu movie. And it's basically a alien home invasion film. And the sort of gimmick of the movie is that because the main character is isolated from community, she doesn't talk, not because she can't speak or anything like that, but because she's just alone. And I find that really fascinating. It's something that is very relatable, not just to me, but just to the fact that we don't speak a lot when we're by ourselves. And so because she's alone most of the time, and there is a reason for that, she is pushed away by her community. She doesn't say a word for the entire movie, I don't think. It's been a bit since I've seen it, but yeah, the gimmick of the movie is that it's pretty much all silent and it's all visual storytelling. And I liked it quite a bit. I didn't think it was amazing. I saw it around the same time that I saw Cobweb, and I don't know what it is, but I feel like the movies are somewhat comparable. I think I like Cobweb better for the style and all that, but I think that this is a movie that I admired more from the perspective of someone that felt like I was watching someone try to make something cool, like if one of my friends made a movie, more so than a big budget film. And it's relatively big budgeted, and it is a 20th century studios, as it's called now, film. So it's not like extremely independent, but I admired it from someone just trying out some cool stuff. I thought that the performance was really great from our lead actress. I can't remember her name, but she was one of the girls in Booksmart. And I thought she looked familiar, and I realized that's where she's from. I'm not going to get into spoilers too much, but the aliens in the movie, I do like that it's sort of the classic stripped back, like, farm UFO invasion style movie, but the aliens in the film have multiple different designs. There's like 3 or 4 of them. And I would have preferred, I think, just one style of alien. I think the first, like, kind of classic one worked, especially because it being classic, it's like, okay, the look of the alien is classic, but what could you do with the story that's interesting? And I think that's interesting. I like when a movie or a show goes back to the basics and then tries to do a twist on it. And I think for the alien to be the original design, but for the story to be what's unique, I think that, that would be really cool. The movie's not great, but I do think it is really well made. And I liked it quite a bit. The ending got really weird and surreal in a way that I enjoyed quite a bit. I do have one thing about the movie that I really didn't like, and it's that the movie has sort of a Twilight Zone ending. That sort of it sort of contrasts the tone of like it's sort of ironically upbeat, right? And I thought that was great, but then it cuts to the credits, and the credits have really intense music, and it really conflicted with the creepily upbeat tone of the ending of the film. And I think that if you're going to do that, which I think is great, I love an ending like that, then the credits also have to have that upbeat, creepy music, instead of the scene being like, oh, this is all happy, and then just like sudden, like, like Hans Zimmer intense style music. So yeah, I think that the musical choice for the end credits really didn't work. If you watch the ending of the movie, you might see what I'm saying. I don't really want to spoil it, but yeah, I thought it was pretty well made, and I would recommend it. So then we had the Futurama revival also on Hulu, and I was cautiously optimistic for this. Futurama has stopped and started like 4 times now, and I thought that the previous finale was essentially perfect, and I was a bit worried with what they were going to do. And before the season started, I was like, okay, here are the 2 options. Either they do like a multi-episode arc and we address the ending of the finale, because if you've seen the original finale, it's sort of hard to imagine how Futurama could continue. Or the series is going to make fun of that and just have a sort of fuck you, here's more Futurama attitude, which I think really fits into the style of Futurama. and they went with the second one. They don't linger too long on the frozen time loop elements that they introduced in the most recent finale. But yeah, it was, I think for the most part it was pretty good. It wasn't amazing. Again, I haven't had a full rewatch of Futurama in a long time. Futurama was probably the first show that I watched on Netflix on the Wii, where before you could see the images and you had to like click one episode at a time, and it was just like numbers. So I have a lot of fond memories watching Futurama on there. And yeah, I mean, I've seen every episode of Futurama. I could have probably used a refresher. I had planned on rewatching it before the new season, but I didn't get the chance to. And so there were some references here and there that I had forgotten about. I watched it with my brother. He reminded me of some. And yeah, I think overall the season was pretty good. I would be looking forward to a next season on Hulu. The only thing is, although I liked all the episodes, the only one that I really wasn't into was the Zach Brannigan gets canceled episode, which is really frustrating because in concept, that's such a funny idea for an episode, but I just thought that it wasn't done really well. And then I can't remember if that's the same episode. It's probably a different episode where we basically just see the Planet Express crew as like different things, like they're ducks or eggs or whatever. That episode I wasn't really crazy about either. But for the most part, I did like the rest of the season, and I would like to see more from future seasons on Hulu. So then I saw Ahsoka, and I liked it okay. I think overall it was pretty good. The first two episodes I thought were rough. I really did not like the way Ahsoka was characterized. I'm just going to say spoilers for Ahsoka so I don't have to hold back on it. I thought the first two episodes were a bit rough, and I hated the way Ahsoka was characterized as this, like, super mean person towards Sabine. And I just want to say right off the bat, I really did not like Sabine being Force sensitive. I thought that was silly. And basically, it recontextualizes Star Wars, where it's like any person who just trains hard enough could use the Force. And I just severely disagree with that idea, and I don't like that Sabine's Force sensitive. I thought that she could have been capable just with, her lightsaber and the Mandalorian tech that she had, but, they went for it. I thought that episodes 3 and 4 was when it got better. 5 was a really great episode, and, it had all the Anakin Clone Wars stuff. All that stuff was really exciting to see. Seeing Rex in live action, that was insane. And, all that was really cool. But it's one of those things where it's like the lizard brain is like super excited, and then it's like, all right, I got to take a step back and not freak out at the fan service and think like, is this actually good apart from me being excited that, oh, look, Rex, oh, look, Darth Vader. And it is good, but that doesn't make the show amazing. And I don't think it even makes the episode amazing necessarily, because they just put all the all the stuff in there. And like I don't mind fan service, it's fine, but I think that there needs to be fan service and the thing needs to be good. And something like Avengers Endgame is a perfect example of being fan service and being really good simultaneously. Same thing with something like Spider-Man No Way Home. I think that's a peak example of good storytelling and fan service. And I think this was fan service over good story. I thought that the finale kind of fell off a bit. I was a bit underwhelmed. I mean, seeing Ezra was really cool. I thought the whole thing with him not using the lightsaber was lame. I was just like, man, just give this dude a lightsaber so we can tear through these people. I think that the show is probably mostly watchable if you haven't seen Rebels, although it definitely helps, obviously. But I think that they introduced the characters mostly well enough for it to not be a problem. Like if you were to just meet new characters in a Star Wars movie the way you regularly do, like watching Empire and Yoda shows up. I thought that Lars Mikkelsen was really good as Thrawn. I think his voice fits really well. As far as the look, not so much. Someone like Cumberbatch would have, fit better, especially with how he was drawn in the canon Timothy Zahn cover art. I think that's much more of a Cumberbatch look than a Lars Mikkelsen look. I thought he was cool. The only thing that I find really frustrating is I thought he was going to do some insane shit before he got into the Star Destroyer and left. Like I thought he was going to do some cool Game of Thrones Littlefinger stuff, kill off one of the characters in like this dude that's like being unleashed into the universe is like genuinely a threat. But he didn't really do that. He didn't do anything that was just like, oh god, it really is devastating that he just got away and escape the unknown regions. And then we have Balin and his apprentice Shin. I think that Ray Stevenson is, or was really great in the role, and it's going to be tough to live that up. Obviously, they are setting up stuff with him by the Mortis statues from Clone Wars. That's going to be something. I don't know who they're going to get to replace him. My pick would be Jason Isaacs. I think he would do a really good job. And then, there's the stuff with Shin appearing onto on the planet, and then she takes out her lightsaber, all that. She might have a different storyline going on. We'll see. I don't really want another season. I would be really happy if we just get Skeleton Crew and then the Filoni theatrical film, and then we're done with the Mandoverse. I don't really care for another season of Mando or Boba Fett. I'd be fine with just Skeleton Crew, and then we just do the crossover, and we'd be done with it. With this era, anyway. Obviously, we're getting the Mangold movie and the Rey continuation film, which those could be fine. We'll see. But Ahsoka overall, I think it was okay. 5 was a really high point. The ends aren't great. I like seeing Ezra. Hu Yang. Hu Yang, voiced by David Tennant. I think that they gave him a really great personality, where he can stand as an iconic droid in the way the 3PO or R2 can, or BB-8. I really like his personality. Obviously he's got those combat capabilities. I was really worried when he was dealing with those guys down on the planet when they landed the Jedi shuttle. But yeah, I don't have too much more to say about Ahsoka. It was fine. I'll probably watch it again at some point, but I haven't rewatched any of the Disney Plus shows apart from Mandalorian. So we'll see. Ahsoka was serviceable enough, I guess, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. And I think I overall would have preferred if this was animated, in the either Clone Wars or Rebel style. Either one would be fine. But yeah, I think this could have just stayed in the animation world. I think Filoni is probably like, oh, look, you see, here's Ahsoka standing next to Anakin Skywalker. Now, this is all legitimate. I've brought Ezra Bridger, my character, into live action. Now they're like real Star Wars, you see? And, that's cool and all. He gets to have his characters fully realized. I forgot to talk about Hera and Chopper. Hera, I don't think Mary Elizabeth Winstead works for Hera at all. Just her vibe is more comical, and it's less tough, mother figure in the crew. And I don't know. I think she was personally miscast, but I guess Filoni doesn't, and it's his character, so I don't know. And then Chopper was. It's hard to mess up Chopper. I don't mind that Kanan and Zeb weren't in the show. It's whatever. It doesn't matter. You don't need to have them in there for it to be good. And it could show some level of restraint, so that's good. And then you have Kanan's son. Is his name Jason? I think it's Jason. And yeah, he's got the green hair, which I think is stupid. Whatever. Move past it. And yeah, they sort of just casually bring up Kanan Jarrus was a Jedi Master who was his father, which is why he has the Force. And that's the stuff where it's like, oh yeah, this is explaining it for the non-Rebels people, but it feels forced and unnatural, to the point where it's like, I mean, it could have been brought up in a much more natural way, I think. But yeah, that him just saying it to the X-Wing pilot that we see, throughout the Mandoverse, I think was a little sloppy. And then we've got, the Lothal in live action, seeing that was cool. And then you've got the E-Wings and all that. And then Clancy Brown playing his character from Rebels, that was cool too. Yeah, it was... Ahsoka could have been more interesting. I think that she should have been more spunky instead of become the stoic Gandalf figure. I think, she was interesting because she was that. And now... she seems to be adopting the Jedi mantra, the Jedi stuff a bit more in a way that I just don't really think suits her, or basically the entirety of her storyline in Clone Wars and Rebels. But maybe, I don't know, maybe Filoni felt that it was more digestible. It is also interesting to see that it feels like he's kind of hijacking past the sequel trilogy by saying that the continuation is from Ahsoka to Sabine instead of from, from Ahsoka to Sabine after Anakin instead of from Luke to Rey. I think that's pretty funny. It feels like he's trying to bypass it, which I don't mind. I mean, it's whatever. It's okay. But yeah, those were my thoughts on Ahsoka. It was fine overall. 5 was really good. And overall, it was an okay experience. Could have been better. Moving on to the Continental. The Continental is the John Wick prequel that takes place in the 70s. It was 3 parts on Paramount Plus, I believe. Or no, it was 3 parts on Peacock. Peacock's where it was streaming. And this is the show revolving around the Continental. And we have young Winston and his brother. Winston being Ian McShane's character from the movies. And this is a little bit embarrassing, but I actually did not realize. My brother and I both, we watched through the whole episode, and we didn't realize until the end of the first part that was Winston. Mainly because the guy who plays him doesn't do an impression or anything, and so I thought it was a completely new character. And yeah, so it felt weird because I was like, oh, I don't really care about these brothers. I think that's the main part of the show. I don't really care about any of the characters. Up until the end of the second part, that's when things got a bit more interesting. And then by part 3, I was into it. But I think part 1 is pretty rough. And by the end of part 2, I would say you're more won over by the show. The 2 siblings that have their dad's dojo, I thought they weren't really interesting. And it's weird to have like 2 sibling stories going on at the same time. But yeah, I feel like the characters were just kind of bland. Same thing with the girl who is the woman who's doing the investigation on Winston. I thought that she was pretty boring too. But then at the end of the show, she comes together in a way where it's like, oh, that makes sense. And so, but I still think that all these elements should have been set up earlier, and the characters should have been more interesting. And I kept telling my brother, instead of being this serious and this bland, I really think that the show would have benefited from being more like Bullet Train, like where all the characters are weird, colorful weirdos, and they all have like their own specific like fighting styles, and they all have combat capabilities, all that sort of stuff that they're trained in fighting each other, and they're just like wacky assassins. I would have preferred that much more. If this was just like 3 parts and it was like Bullet Train, that'd be great. I also think that maybe if you did the whole show takes place in New York in one night, I think that would have been really cool. Just where you make, because there's not a lot of action in the show. A lot of it's the character stuff, and we don't really watch John Wick for the character stuff. We watch it for the cool guy stuff and the action scenes. And for it to be 3 parts and mostly not action, I think, I don't know, it wasn't really interesting to watch. And I would have loved to have like essentially a 3-hour movie of people in the 70s fighting around in New York, and then it leading to the Continental somehow, everyone being assassins from the Continental. I thought that would have been much more interesting. Mel Gibson's in the show. He's pretty good in it. I think he could have been better, more... I think there could have been more depth to him. And then we also have an actor playing young Sharon. And I think he also does a really good job in the show. It's frustrating because about 50% of the show, the first half, is not great. But then the second half really picks up, and it's like, okay, this is coming together much more. But should have been doing this from the beginning. I think that... I don't know if they're going to do a second season. I mean, they are doing all these John Wick spinoffs because they're also doing the ballerina one with Ana de Armas. I believe that's still happening. But yeah, I guess I would recommend it. Just stick through it to halfway. The 70s aesthetic is cool. I do like it. But yeah, I think instead of the characters and the world being so serious, I think everyone should just be a wacky weirdo assassin, and exactly like Bullet Train. If you haven't seen Bullet Train, I talked about it in a previous video. Highly recommend it. Bullet Train's awesome. Maybe it's because of my expectations, but I would have had much more fun with the show. And I mean, you look at the other John Wick movies and you have weird, wacky assassins, like the guy with like the creepy bug eyes from part 3, I believe it is, who's like the John Wick fanboy. Like, have characters like that where it's like, wow, everyone's like a character, everyone's zany. I would have much preferred that. So, yeah, it gets better as it goes on, but I would have preferred the show to be basically completely reinvented. And I do, I guess, admire that they wanted the guy who plays Winston to sort of give it his own interpretation, but it sort of feels like a completely different character, and therefore I think I would have rather had that you have an actor just basically do an Ian McShane impression so I know it's the same character, because my brother and I both watched it. And it wasn't until I was like, Winston, that I was like, why do I feel like John Wick says Winston? And then I was like, oh right, he's in the movies and he's supposed to be this character, but he really doesn't feel like this character. Um, and so yeah, I'd like to see continue because I think it leaves off on a place that's more interesting than where the show as a whole begun. Like if we continue from this point, I think it'll be way better, especially because all the characters are established. So we'll see what they do with it. I don't think that they've announced a second season, but I would, yeah, I would be intrigued to see what they could do with it. So that is the end of part one. There will be most likely two more parts to this, at least one more part, in which I go over the other stuff in 2023 that I didn't get to within the last few months. So thank you so much for listening, and have a good one.